Thank you so much for attending my PowerPoint presentation on the stupidest strats in Dota history. Now first is one that old school players will know and hate, and that is cliff jungling. This refers to a series of techniques where heroes were able to get on top of a cliff, usually a ward spot, but still be able to hit some kind of neutral camp. The most famous example of this was with Nature's Prophet, who, right from the start of the game, could teleport onto the ward spot right next to the Ancients and hit them while they were unable to hit him back. Now, even with his starting item build completely optimized for the idea, it still took a very, very long time for a level 1 Furion to grind down an entire camp of Thunderhides. But the golden XP rewards were so great that you could oftentimes wind up having the same amount of farm as your offlaner, who was no doubt suffering from your incredibly selfish behavior. Now, Furion, due to his dumb little mushroom hat, is the most memorable of these options, but there were actually a few other heroes who could do something equivalent to cliff jungling. Darkseer, for example, could use Vacuum to stack a camp on top of a ward spot, and then put an ion shell on one, vacuum that up, and wait for it to die. Necrophos was another fairly common option because of Heartstopper aura dealing damage to creeps but not actually aggroing them. He would get 1 point in Heartstopper aura and then just sit by the Ancient camp and wait for them to slowly grind down, and somehow he managed to do it even slower than Nature's Prophet. Queen of Pain could blink up and use her Q in order to constantly proc aggro from a nearby camp, allowing her to right-click it with impunity, and Venomancer could put down a bunch of his wards on a ward spot, run away, and kite to the jungle camp into them. All of these techniques were absolute dog shit, and there's a reason why Valve has removed any semblance of a ward spot from being anywhere near the Ancient camps. This is by far one of the most selfish ways to ever play the game of Dota 2, and I am more than glad that it is gone, but I know that there's quite a variety of 2-digit IQ morons who would absolutely jump at the chance to do it again. It wasn't even fun to do, and I think that its removal is further demonstrative of the fact that Valve's primary goal when developing Dota 2 is to save us from ourselves. Before moving on, you should know that Blast has sponsored Dota 2 PowerPoints again, this time to promote Slam 6, its currently ongoing $1 million Dota tournament. The group stage for this event has been very exciting, primarily because so many teams are eager to give a Largo a try, but also because somehow, someway, Na'Vi and OG dumpstered everyone. It's a beautiful thing seeing these boomer-ass logos at the top of the group stage win chart, and I must say, it's going to make for an amazing playoffs. Just like last time, I'll have another personality-based PowerPoint to be presented by none other than 3-time major winner Quinn Callahan. The Liquipedia link is in the description if you'd like to catch the action live, and thank you very much Blast for supporting Dota 2 PowerPoints. Next is another very funny strat that Valve has bent over backwards attempting to remove from the game, and that strat is taking a tower at level 1. This strat has actually existed for a considerable amount of time in Dota, but the last time it truly reared its ugly head was in 2021. Pandemic-era matchmaking was a very strange experience, and while most Dota players are more than happy to spend all of their time locked inside of their room, this proved that at least something was affecting their mentality. There's a bunch of different team comps, but by far the most famous is Nature's Prophet, Abaddon, Luna, Legion Commander, and Snapfire. The idea is that as the enemy team was spreading out, establishing a vision game, and jockeying for control of the starting bounty runes, your team would instead all go to a single lane and begin attacking the tier 1 tower at level 1. Nature's Prophet would spawn Treants in order to tank the tower, Abaddon would use Curse of Avernus in order to increase everyone's DPS, Luna would get her aura at level 1 to buff everyone's right click, Snapfire would use Little Shredder to reduce the tower's armor, and Legion Commander was there for fun. Now while there's a few different heroes that you can swap in and out of this lineup, the reason this one is the most famous is because it happened in a pro match. Back in Week 4 of the Upper Division of Season 2 of the Chinese Dota Pro Circuit back in 2021, Sparking Arrow Gaming logged in for a match against Team Aster and picked these 5. Already playing an incredibly lopsided matchup against the god Monet, they decided that instead of attempting to win, they would do something incredibly funny. They wound up taking the tier 1 before the horn even sounded, and as a result, Aster's mid laner had to play without a tower. Now this may sound like a pretty powerful move to make, but in reality, it's completely throwing the game, because there is now no tower in order to keep the creep waves centered in the middle of the map. Aster's mid laner was able to pull the creep wave all the way closer to his tier 2, where there's absolutely no possibility of getting dove, and there's no way the enemy supports can transition in order to help. Now Valve has taken minor steps in order to make this strategy even less viable than it already wasn't, but what if I told you that there is not one, but 2 different heroes that you can pick to execute this strategy all on their own? The first is Lashrak, who can nestle into trees near the enemy tier 1 safe lane tower, pop Diabolic Edict, and very, very slowly grind it down, possibly without the enemy team ever realizing it. The other is techies, who can pick the squeeze scope facet, buy a bunch of attack speed right at the start, convert it to attack range, and then just poke at a tier 1 tower from just outside of its aggro range. Now, I've specifically told you these two strategies in order to prevent you from accidentally doing them, but if it ever happens to you, just know that Sparking Arrow Gaming did not win that game. Now, taking a tower at level 1 is an absolutely devilish thing to do, but just imagine if you were the kind of sick bastard where that doesn't sound like it goes far enough. If that's the case, then I have an amazing strat for you that, believe it or not, you can still execute in the modern version of Dota. I'm not promising you'll win, in fact, you'll probably lose, but you will have one hell of a time. That strategy is the level 1 Death Ball, a technique that completely skips the laning phase and goes right into the mid-game with 5 heroes that can stack auras to deal a ridiculous amount of damage. Those 5 heroes, with some interchangeability, are Abaddon, Witch Doctor, Luna, Vengeful Spirit, and Nature's Prophet, and each one of them has a very specific goal. Now, in the original version of the strat, Nature's Prophet would spawn treants in order to tank a tower, Witch Doctor would heal everyone, Luna and Venge would put points in their auras to make everyone hit harder, and Curse of Avernus would make everyone hit faster. But usually, after taking the level 1 tower, every hero goes back to their lanes and the game is mostly normal. In this one, the game will be everything but. You won't be stopping at a single tower. Instead, all 5 of you will be traveling as a pack like hyenas from lane to lane in order to take out a tier 1 and then move on to the tier 2s. You will spend the entire match in both a gold and XP deficit, but with this many auras, who gives a shit? Now, I have absolutely zero doubt that there is some kind of way to pull off a level 1 death ball in the current version of Dota. The heroes might be different, the macro objectives might change, but I look at those teleport portals in the corners of the map and start licking my lips. Now, if you are able to find a modern version of this strategy, I imagine it will still only be viable in the deepest of the trenches. But if you ever played it back in the heyday of 2020, you would have very, very fond memories of pulling it off with you and your boys. And if you didn't believe me before when I mentioned that pandemic-era Dota was a little bit weird, the viability of this strategy in public matchmaking should prove it to you. 18 level 1 heroes in the showers at Dire Jungle. 18 spawning camps wanting to be farmed. 18 camps ready to be slammed. Dire Jungle really jams. Oh jeez, I don't even know what took over me there. Anyway, let's talk about the 5-man jungle jam. If you had to rate every single strategy that anyone has ever used in order to try to win or honestly even lose a Dota match, the 5-man jungle jam would probably be at the top or very, very close to it. See, this wasn't so much a strategy as it was a very weird content farming idea that a channel 12 years ago had, and that channel's name was Dota Poop. The rules of the challenge are quite simple. No hero on your team is able to accumulate golden XP from any other sources outside of the jungle. That means that for a very, very important part of the match, you aren't allowed to interact with the lanes in any meaningful way. You're also not allowed to gank, but if the enemy heroes walk into your jungle, you are fully permitted to protect this house. A select number of Dota stacks, whose members entirely consisted of fucking donkeys, decided to give this a shot in matchmaking. Now, unsurprisingly, conceding every single lane and giving up the most powerful form of golden XP for the first 20 minutes of the match is not a valid way to win a game of Dota. Even Dota Poop themselves, the creators of this strategy, couldn't do it, and to my knowledge, no one has ever won a match of 5-man jungle jam. And now that Valve has completely neutered every hero's ability to start the game in the jungle, it's very likely that no one ever will. I wrote a little bit about theory crafting in Dota and how the game eases you into it. Feel free to read it if you like. And while no real Dota 2 stack has ever been able to win a game while completely forsaking all 3 lanes, there is another, even more dastardly way to potentially gain some MMR. Back in 2016, a group of Dota 2 e-celebs consisting of Analyst Purge, Observer Pimpmuckle, Personality Charlie, Commentator Cap, and TI winner Blitz decided to play a game of Dota where they didn't level a single active ability. As with the level 1 Death Ball, the idea was to deal an insane amount of physical damage by stacking a bunch of useful auras, specifically from Drow and Luna. However, they were allowed to take certain kinds of abilities that couldn't be copied by a Rubik, such as Drow Ranger's Frost Arrows, Luna's Lunar Blessing, or Spirit Breaker's Bash. By beginning the draft with Tidehunter and Enigma as their initial picks, they also baited the enemy team into picking not only Rubik, but Silencer, and both of them were completely useless the entire match. The incredibly minor exception to this is that Blitz insisted on putting a single point in Luna Ultimate without any points in Lucent Beam, meaning it didn't do anything except make the screen dark. And somehow, someway, by stacking as many auras as possible and putting all of their points in bonus stats, they managed to win. Now earlier, I mentioned how level 1 Death Ball is probably relegated to the trenches, and you would have an incredibly difficult time ever winning a match with the 5-man jungle jam. But my fascination with the no spell strat continues to grip my brain almost 10 years later. If you're ever able to win a match under the exact same restrictions, not casting a single active spell the entire time, and you manage to bait either a silencer or Rubik pick, please send me the match ID, and I will officially sign a legal document saying that I owe you $1. In conclusion, Dota 2 is a moronic video game, and you should absolutely play it. Somehow, Luna is a viable pick for 4 of the 5 strategies listed in today's video. This makes her an incredible sleeper pick for the dumbest hero of all time. Peace on planet Earth.